Hello, my name is Robert A. Williams, Professor of Law and American Indian Studies here at the University of Arizona in Tucson, in the heart of Indian country. I'm the founder of UA NativeNet, and I want to talk to you for a few minutes about federal Indian law and why it's important for you to know about it. The field of federal Indian law involves a distinct body of law that regulates the legal relationships between Indian tribes and the United States. The rules and principles of federal Indian law also define the limits of state law over tribes and their reservation homelands. The tribes, their members, and lands held by both are dramatically affected by federal Indian law. In an era of tribal nation building, this body of law has never been more important to creating self-governing, sustainable societies and economies. That's why UA NativeNet, based here at the University of Arizona, has designed this course for tribal leaders, tribal attorneys, and educators. Never has an understanding of the basic rules and principles of federal Indian law been more important to Indian people and Indian country. The body of federal Indian law, expressed in separate volumes of the United States Code and the Code of Federal Regulations, in some 380 treaties, in hundreds of opinions of the Solicitor of the Department of the Interior, in thousands of cases, and in scores of law review articles, is of increasing interest and importance to tribal leaders, attorneys, and educators in all parts of the country because of the growing political and economic influence of tribes. The Supreme Court often decides more Indian cases than the numbers of Indians relative to the population as a whole would seem to justify. The field of Indian law is particularly challenging because it implicates other branches of legal study, such as real property, international law, administrative law, constitutional law, water law, federal jurisdiction, procedure, contracts, criminal law, and many others. Congress regularly enacts new laws to implement change policy without abolishing old laws that were intended as instruments of an earlier policy. Still, the treaties signed more than 2 centuries ago are given legal force today under the well-established principles of federal Indian law. Federal Indian law has been described as complex or anomalous. Many rights and obligations are unique to the federal-tribal relationship, and many principles are different for different groups of Indians because they've been singled out for special legislation, because of their treaty provisions, or because of their geographic location. But as a basic foundation, it is important to understand the following ideas and concepts that are central to the field of federal Indian law and which will be taught to you in this course. Tribal sovereignty and Indian property rights, federal power and obligations over Indian affairs, jurisdiction over the reservation. The study of Indian law may be more important than ever before in the nation's history. A basic understanding of federal Indian law is vital to the success of any major initiative undertaken by tribal leaders in Indian country in the 21st century. A basic knowledge of federal Indian law is essential for attorneys representing tribes and for those representing entities and individuals having dealings with tribes. Educators need to teach our next generation of Indian tribal leaders and attorneys about Indian law. There are many reasons to study and learn about federal Indian law. This course will help get you started on that path. Ultimately, after finishing this course, you may want to ask yourself whether Felix Cone, the greatest of all Indian lawyers, was making an overdrawn point about the old treaty promises when he discussed the role of Indian law in our public law system and why it was worthy of study and reflection by all Americans. Cone wrote, "The Indian plays much the same role in our American society that the Jews played in Germany. Like the miner's canary, the Indian marks the shift from fresh air to poison gas in our political atmosphere. And our treatment of Indians, even more than our treatment of other minorities, reflects the rise and fall in our democratic faith."